Hey everyone, I'm Nate Savage.
And I'm Andrew Clark.
And welcome to the GuitarLessons.com live show. We just got done with a live lesson in the GuitarLessons.com Academy members area on guitar fundamentals. We talked about a couple things that kind of plague a lot of newer guitar players or those just getting back into it. So we're going to kind of do the same thing here with you guys in the public live lesson. And this is only the second time we've done this, but we had so much fun last week and it worked so well that we figured we'd just keep doing it. So let us know what you think about this and, you know, topics you're interested in if you like this and you're digging it.
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you subscribe to YouTube, you'll be able to get notifications whenever we're going to go live, as well as our kind of regular, more structured lessons that we sometimes put out, shorter videos, 5-10 minutes. And make sure you follow us on Facebook, as we'll be announcing all that stuff there as well.
Cool. This lesson today is going to be great for you if you're having trouble doing some fundamental things on the guitar that stop a lot of people from progressing or make people stop playing altogether. Things like making clean open chords, putting strumming together with the chords, those type of things. So we don't want those roadblocks to get in the way for you. And we don't want to just throw a lot of information at you in this lesson and kind of throw you to the wolves. So I have some actionable points that you can use in your practice time on a regular basis to see real results, which is going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see.
Awesome. We got lots of people in here too. Lots of people in chat.
Nice. Where are you guys from around the globe? I'm just curious. I saw one guy in there from Nigeria earlier, so that was pretty
That's a ways away.
Yeah, I know. I think he wins the award unless anybody else. We may have to bust out a map and do some math here.
We're in Canada, in case you're wondering.
Just outside of Vancouver, BC.
In Canada, yeah.
Okay, so a lot of guitarists have trouble making clean chords, and if that's you, don't feel bad because almost everybody struggles with this initially. What we're going to do, like I said, is give you 5 tips for making clean chords and 5 tips for strumming as well. But before we do that, we just want to do some playing for you. This is a jam track from the GuitarLessons.com Academy members area that's in the style of Oasis, and it uses a lot of open chords, which Andrew will be playing. He'll be playing like the core part, and I'll just be doing some decorations, some cross picking, and some fingerstyle stuff over it.
Yeah.
It's in the key of A, and we are using capos. If you guys have any questions about that, you can submit them in the chat, and we'll get to them as much as we can.
We're going to try our best because it's kind of hard to keep up with, but if you do have questions about something we're talking about, I'm going to try and pay attention to chat. I'm going to copy those, and then we'll try and get Nate to get to them when we can.
Cool.
Yeah? Okay. Let us play. Let's make sure. Oops, sorry. I'm in tune here.
Cool.
Okay.
Sounds good. So that's just kind of a
nice.
little. Let me get in tune back here since that capo's on.
Yeah.
So again, what we're gonna do is just go through 5 really actionable tips for making clean chords that you can implement into your practice time. And we're gonna do the same thing, 5 practical tips that you can use to start developing your strumming to go along with your chords. And since the title of this lesson is Guitar Fundamentals, I'm gonna mention some really basic things for people who are just brand new to the guitar and starting out, just to start off. That way everybody can kind of be on the same page. So if you know these first couple little things, that's totally fine.
Couple just quick things I want to answer here in chat. Again, I'm trying my best to follow along in chat, but it's kind of tough. But what we played there, it's not improvised. Nate kind of wrote this in the style of Oasis. And this is one of our, Nate kind of writes these jam tracks and then we learn how to play them inside of the guitarlessons.com Academy.
Right.
So that's one of the songs from in there that we were playing together. Nate's part is not in there. My part is the part that you would learn.
That you would learn, yeah. It's I have the tab and stuff for that in the nerves area.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Like the idea for those kind of jam tracks that we have in there is to work on 1, maybe 2 specific techniques or elements of playing that you need to kind of focus on. That one is strumming.
Yeah, exactly. And then applying it to music instead of just strumming. to
Yeah,
nothing.
exactly. So, okay, I learned how to strum to an exercise. Great, what do I do now?
Exactly. Okay, let's. Do you want to jump right in? I think it's best to
just some fundamental things you need to know, guys. If this is your first experience with the guitar, you need to learn a couple of numbering systems, and I'll hit these real quick. The numbering systems for your fingers, the strings of the guitar, and the frets. Fingers, it's really easy. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you hear me say, take your second finger, you're going to be using your middle finger, right? Just like if you were counting. The strings of the guitar are a little bit less intuitive. Some people think it's backwards from what it is, but the thinnest string, the one right here, is the first string. And then it just goes from there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The lowest string is the low E string, or the 6th string. That's your 6th string. Skinniest one is your 1st string. That's all you have to really remember. And as far as where to put your fingers, on the guitar neck, these metal strips in the wood right here in the neck are called frets. And you just number them starting from the one farthest that way. So 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret. So if I told you to put your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret, 1, 2, 3, of the 2nd string, that's where you would end up right there. So that seems pretty simple, but it's really important to have down initially once you start playing guitar. Now we're going to get into the 5 tips for making clean sounding chords. And to kind of facilitate this, or use it as a springboard, we're going to look at a C major chord, because we get emails or messages every day about people who are just starting out or just getting back into guitar, having trouble with specifically the C major chord. So if you can play that, you can play all your other open chords, no problem. So first tip, C major chord, or just any chord for that matter, is a general posture you want to have when you bring your hand up to the guitar. Is just stick your hand out and pretend like you have a baseball or an apple in your hand or something. Bring it up to the guitar neck, put it there. That's the first tip, is that general posture. Think about that as you spend time playing the guitar. And the next step, if you look at your open C chord, you need to have your 1st finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string right here. And that next tip is going to be to put your finger right behind the fret. You don't want to have it toward the middle or toward the back, because listen what happens. It starts to buzz. So the closer you get to that fret, the better and cleaner it's going to sound. So posture, fingers right behind the frets. Next finger is going to go right behind the fret on the 2nd fret of the D string, or the 4th string. Right behind the fret, make sure. And as you do this, tip number 3 is to come right down on the very tips of your fingers, or really tall fingers. Now what happens if you don't do that, check it out. If I kind of relax and let my finger slump over, the index finger is going to mute the next string, the high E string, the 1st string. So you don't want to do that. You want to come right down on the very tip of your finger. And watch how little it takes for that to start sounding bad. Just that little tiny motion right there. So keep that in mind too. Posture, right behind the frets, right on the very tips of your fingers. Tip number 4 is don't kink your wrist too far, one way or the other when you're making this chord. See, let's get the rest of this C chord on here. Put your 3rd finger out and play the 3rd fret, 1, 2, 3, of the A string. And that completes the chord, and you don't want to kink your wrist too far one way or the other. If you kink it far this way, you're going to have a really hard time coming down on the very tips of your fingers, and your fingers are going to end up muting all the neighboring strings, which is just a nightmare. So don't kink it too far this way. Think about holding that baseball. Think about right behind the frets, very tips of your fingers. Don't kink it too far that way. And don't kink it too far this way either. It makes it easier to get a good angle of attack on the strings. But if you kink it too far this way, it is going to start to hurt after a while, so you want to avoid that. So posture, right behind the frets, very tips of your fingers. Don't kink your wrist too far one way or the other. And the final tip that can kind of tie all this in for you is you're going through your open chords and you're starting to learn how to make them. Make sure not to have your elbow sticking up here. Make sure to bring your elbow in or just kind of let it fall and relax. That's going to do a couple things. It's going to put you in a lot better angle for getting on the very tips of your fingers. It's going to make it a lot easier for you because you're not going to have to hold your arm up. A lot of times when people look over to see what chord they're making when they're first starting out, that's kind of a natural for their elbow to go out. It's just something that happens. So be aware of that. Stay relaxed and bring your elbow into your body. That's going to make it a lot easier to come right down to the very tips of your fingers. So those are the 5 tips for making clean chords. If you have this kind of noise going, just run through that checklist really quick. And we have a PDF for you to download with all of these tips on there. Chord diagram for the C major chord. And it's just something you can implement no matter what chord you're going through, whether it's bar chords, open chords, minor chords, whatever you're working on. So posture, right behind the frets, very tips of your fingers. Don't kink your wrist too far one way or the other. And elbow in.
Nice. One quick thing I'll let you guys know. Someone was asking about what is in our ears. It's just so we could hear the jam track.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. They're just in-ear monitors. That's all.
Cool.
We're getting some questions in, which is awesome. Now, some people are saying you're not seeing our questions. I'm doing my best. I've got your questions written down, and we're going to try and address them later. So if you do have questions about anything Nate's talking about, write them in chat, and I'm going to try and get them, and then we'll talk about them at the end.
Okay, yeah, real quick, before we move on to the questions, just I want to give everyone out there, if you've already got the clean chords down and you're working on your strumming, I want to give you 5 tips for making your strumming clean and developing. First tip is to relax. If you tense up when you play, it's going to be really hard for you to keep up with faster tempo songs, or it's going to be hard for you to play with an entire song, at least 3 minutes most songs, somewhere between 3 and 5. So if you're tense, it's going to make it really hard for you to keep up with your strumming. So that's number 1. Keep that in mind as you work on your strumming. Tip number 2 kind of goes right from that, and that is what I call the honey and feather analogy. A lot of people, when they tense up, they need to think about relaxing, and one way to do that is to pretend that you have a feather stuck on your pinky with some honey and you're just trying to flick it off. That motion is just the best analogy I've ever heard for how to strum a guitar. And you can't help but stay relaxed if you do that. So tip number 2, just remember the feather honey analogy and get that flicking motion, work on it. And as you do this, you can work on just one strumming pattern that we have here on the PDF for you, strumming pattern number 1, and that's just all downstrokes with quarter notes. And that's a really good one because it's super easy. Everybody can do this. And you can think about all the tips, all 5 tips as you're doing it. Relax. Think about that flicking motion, right? Tip number 3 comes right in order. It's something that you kind of have to think about as they follow from relaxing in the feather honey analogy, and that is don't just lock your wrist and strum from your elbow. That causes tension, number 1, and you can't get that flicking motion in there. Now, there are some guitarists who strum completely from their elbow and lock their wrist, but they're really not tense. And one thing to remember is keep your wrist fluid. Don't just lock it and strum from your elbow. My elbow's helping out. A lot of the motion is coming from my wrist. It's kind of rotating that flicking motion. So relax, feather honey, don't lock your wrist. And just think about those tips as you go through and practice this all downstrokes down. Tip number 4 is pick grip. You need to experiment with how you're gripping your pick. A lot of newer players have trouble holding onto the pick. They say, well, it feels like it's flying out of my hands all the time. There are a couple of things that you can do to kind of remedy that. The first one, let me show you here. is to use 2 fingers to hold the pick, especially on acoustic because acoustics usually have heavier strings, right? So when you hit the strings, they kick back a little bit more at you. So you need to be really relaxed, and holding on with 2 fingers when you're doing a lot of strumming can be a way to help you have control of the pick to where it doesn't feel like it's going to fly out of your fingers. And on acoustic, I do that a lot, but on electric, when I play, I tend to use just my index finger and my thumb, and I make little micro adjustments as I'm playing, right? To keep the pick where I need it to be.
One thing I like to do with that, just to mention, is I hold with the 2 fingers like this, and then I make my micro adjustments with that second finger. Yeah. And then it's like I'm always solid with my grip here. I'm not gripping too hard, but I can just move it around just a little bit there.
Cool. So it's something you're just gonna have to get used to. And once you start experimenting with that, either 2 fingers to where you don't have to make the micro adjustments as much, or just the 1 finger and thumb, you're gonna get to where it's not a big deal. You just have to be aware of it at first and start working on it, and then you'll be good to go. Okay, let's see. Last tip. A lot of players, when they're doing a lot of strumming, they complain that it's hard to get the upstroke through the strings. And one thing I would encourage you with this is just to mind your upstrokes. That's tip number 5. And by that, I mean only use enough of the tip of the pick as necessary, just the very tip to get through the strings. If you dig way into the strings, you're gonna get caught in there. It's gonna be hard for you to get that pick through the strings. Also, make sure you're not holding on to the pick too tightly, or the pick won't give, and that'll get you caught on your upstroke. So keep it only as tight as you need to keep the pick in your fingers. Also, for your upstrokes, you don't have to play through all 6 strings. Or in the case of the C chord, my downstrokes will probably hit all 5 strings except for that low E, and then my upstroke may only grab the top 3 to 4 strings. So don't feel like you have to hit all 5 strings in that C chord with your upstroke. Just the top, 3 or 4 strings is fine. So remember that on your upstrokes, only use just enough of the pick to make the noise you want. Stay relaxed, don't hold on too tight. And that'll make getting your pick through the strings a lot easier. And you'll see on the PDF the second strumming pattern in there to kind of help you develop your strumming. It's just a straight upstroke strumming pattern to work on applying all 5 of these tips to your upstrokes.
That's awesome. Is that all you wanted to do for teaching?
Yeah, that's all I want to do for teaching. Yeah. So download that PDF, and if you're having trouble making clean chords, or if you're having trouble developing your strumming and getting it kind of caught up to your chords that you've learned, just keep that out with you while you're practicing, and be aware if you're doing any of those things contrary to what those 5 tips are there.
Totally. Okay, so first, before we kind of start jumping into questions here, Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, that's our time zone, right? Pacific?
Yep.
We're planning on doing these every week, is our plan. We want to know what you guys think about that. Is that something that you guys think is cool? Not cool? 2 weeks what do you guys think? We're thinking every week. And then how much teaching do you guys want? Do you want Nate to go the whole time teaching? Do you guys want us to be able to answer your questions? Do you want us to talk about maybe some other stuff, talk about gear, all that kind of stuff? Yeah. We'd love to know, because we're still trying to figure this out a little bit too.
Yeah, we want to do stuff that's fun for everybody and that interests everyone, and have a fun hangout where you can talk about guitar and give you some tips for whatever stage of playing you're at. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think this one's good. So lots of questions coming through. Lots of different topics. So
that's okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna try to go through them somewhat in order as they come through. So this one's from Adam, and he says, my question is how to strum eighth notes, especially in a blues shuffle, say in the key of E. That experience has me pulling my hair.
Okay, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. I assume you're talking about the swing or shuffle feel, which varies from person to person wildly depending on their interpretation of the feel, like if you're playing with the drummer, but I assume you're playing with yourself for now. One thing I would do if you have access to a metronome, like an app on your phone, a lot of times the app Tempo actually is really great for this. You can set tempo to do quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But you can also lay on top of that eighth note triplets, or 3 evenly spaced notes per beat. So you're gonna hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is the foundation of the swing beat or a shuffled eighth note feel for a blues tune. So that's just an underlying eighth note pulse or eighth note triplet pulse throughout the entire thing. The key is for each beat you have to leave the middle eighth note out. So so you have when you leave that middle eighth note out, you end up with That is how you think about playing an eighth note shuffle. And if you put on a metronome with eighth note triplets being kind of but you have an accent on the 1, 2, 3, and 4, so it sounds like this. Let me do that again. Something like that. What you would want to do, well, it's going to tell you right away if your eighth note playing your shuffle eighth note is lining up to the click automatically. So you're going to have to hear it and adjust accordingly. And if you spend a couple weeks just playing triplets and then leaving the middle one out, that's going to help your eighth note feel a ton. And it's something that you have to go through and kind of develop on your own because you're going to need control of that. If you're playing with other people, other people's feels for eighth note triplets or a swung shuffle beat may not be exactly like yours. So you're going to have to learn how to get a lot of control over it and match it to whatever drummer or bass player you're playing with. Cool.
Nice. Sorry, this is ridiculous. Lots of chat going by. I'm trying to get them all, guys. Okay, this next one is from Quad 4. He was thinking we didn't get his question, but we got his question. Okay. He knows some chords. He or she, I'm sorry, I don't know. Knows some chords, and I know how to strum. How do I put it together?
Okay, I would first start off without a metronome at all. Say you're trying to switch between a G and a C chord. Take as long as you need to, get that C on there, and then switch, and then just strum to it. Do that for a while until you can make that switch. And the prerequisite for this is that you have to know that G chord to where you can go right to it on its own. And you have to know that C chord to where you can go to it right on its own. If you can't go right to it, you need to spend some time working on it to where you can go right to it. So in other words, if you're still doing one finger at a time, that kind of thing, you need to spend more time working on getting your C chord down. But if you can go right to the two chords you're trying to change between, first start off with no metronome, and then start off really slowly, like 60 beats per minute, and just do quarter notes, or even whole notes. Whole notes is probably better if you're a beginner, maybe 70 beats per minute, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then maybe do like 2 measures of G like I did there, and then switch to a C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, back to G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And going that slow is going to give you a lot of time to think about connecting, the brain pathways where you can think about changing chords and strumming at the same time. Once you can do that, maybe do half notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 notes per beat. And then eventually you're going to want to work your way up to quarter notes, so every number you're strumming down, right? So to maybe do a measure of G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's developing your timing and giving you less time to change chords, but the major prerequisite to working on this is having the chords you're trying to switch between down to where you can go right to them with no trouble. If you don't have that, it's just going to be a lot more of a challenge to switch between 2 chords that you really can't go to on their own first.
Nice. Good question. Next one is from Andre. This is a little bit more advanced, so maybe we'll just touch on this one quickly, and then down the road we're going to do more lead guitar stuff. So improvising in E minor, what scale can I use other than the E minor pentatonic? Depends on
So
the style.
scale. Obviously, well, no, maybe not obviously too. So you have an E minor pentatonic. Learning how the natural minor scale is made, I went up the minor pentatonic and then down the natural minor scale. I would probably focus on the natural minor scale and throwing in some minor arpeggios too.
And
Those two things.
the only thing I'm thinking is if you only know the one shape, it's worth learning the other shapes as well. And if you learn the E minor pentatonic, the 5 shapes, we actually have a free lesson on YouTube, the 5 pentatonic shapes. They're basically the same, that's the big secret, as the minor scale shapes.
Yeah, you just
except
throw in
you just
extra
add a
notes.
couple extra notes. So that I like that. That's a good answer. Like I said, we'll spend some more time on like that basic intro lead guitar stuff down the road. But today the focus is on acoustic and beginner stuff. So next question. These YouTube names are awesome. Like they're so random.
I'm not
Some
getting
of
to
them.
look at him as much as I
Yeah,
want.
like this guy's name is Ha.
Ha!
How do you feel about drop D tuning?
I love it. My favorite rock band in the world is King's X, and they started out. I think they tuned to E flat and then drop, so drop D flat. I love it just because it makes less effort to move power chords around. So drop D for those of you that don't know what it is. If this is a regular power chord, right, G power chord. If I took my low E string and dropped it down to a D, that would be, I have 2 Ds, and then the 5th of D, which is an A right here. So instead of playing this shape for a bar chord, or a power chord, sorry, I do this 1 finger across all 3 strings. So that would be a lot harder to play if I were using standard power chords. And I use it a lot for acoustic too, actually, because you get a nice low drone D, and you can use open like D shapes.
I see here Don mentioned. I'm not familiar with this song specifically, but he says he's just learning Neil Young's Harvest Moon,
Oh yeah.
and apparently that's in drop D, and he says that's great for working on strumming. and
Okay,
doing
I
drop
never
D.
realized that was in drop D. Sweet.
I think that's what he's saying. It's good to know. Yeah, drop D is great with power chords, is
Yeah,
what
it's
William's
super
saying.
awesome.
It really is. That's kind of the best thing. And drop C, yes.
Drop C. Heck yeah, man.
And drop B and drop A.
No, I did a whole project in drop C. Well, not drop C. Either was a D standard or drop C.
Nice.
Yeah, it was fun.
I played around with a baritone guitar for a while. Great for recording and stuff. Baritone guitars are cool. Just check them out. B standard. Anyways. Next one here. Malcolm, he said that he's been doing the 10-minute challenge on changing chords and
Oh, cool.
strumming every day for the last 3 weeks, and he can see improvement. Upstrokes are happily getting better.
Awesome,
and I've seen a couple people mention that chord changing challenge video. Go through it if you haven't. It's amazing.
We had a question today in the Academy private lesson about they wanted to do more challenge, and I was like, well, okay, we'll post it in the forums and see what kind of stuff you guys want. But if that many people are finding them useful, we'll just do more YouTube ones as well.
Yeah, I think challenge can sometimes be intimidating, but like the chord changing challenge one specifically, and even I think the 100 scale challenge, they're actually not crazy hard, and you can almost apply them at any level, right? So it's great. So definitely look out for the challenge videos. We're gonna try and do more of those. Okay, next one here is from RJ. He's saying that I'm having difficulty in shifting from one bar chord to another. What should I do?
Okay. We had a similar question to this earlier too, but it was open chords to bar chords.
Yeah.
So I think it was Mayberry. I can't remember. I think it was, yeah. Anyway, the biggest tip I have for this kind of stuff is to really take some time every day, whether it's 5 to 10 minutes, probably even 5 minutes is enough for this, and just isolate whatever chord change is giving you trouble. Only 2 chords. Keep it focused to 2 chords instead of just jumping into whatever song you're playing and trying to go through all the changes and feeling like, oh, I just keep screwing this up. What's wrong with me, right? Sit down and do some concerted playing, a really focused practice time. So for example, if you had this G bar chord, E shape, and this D bar chord, A shape, just spend some time really focused changing between those 2 chords. And it may not be that fast at first, but that's totally fine. And a lot of times, check this out, if I go to a D bar chord like this, using the A shape, my index finger is in a totally different position than it would be if I went to this E shaped bar chord using a G bar chord using E shape. But I don't bother adjusting that when I move to a D from this chord because it just saves time to not do that. I just slide right up instead of doing this. So getting used to that is another little shortcut. But isolate that challenge for 5 minutes and then go work on the song that you're using, that chord change is actually used in.
Awesome. The hard part is over. This is what I said to the other
Yeah.
fella as well. Like getting the bar chord to just sound clean on its own, that is the part that usually takes a long time. I know when I was learning bar chords when I was a kid, it was like, I probably spent 6 months trying to get a clean bar chord. Eventually I got it. All of a sudden, it was like a week before I could change between them. And then a week before I could change between that and open chords. So the hard part's done. Okay, next one here from Kyle. I've had my guitar for 3 years. Should I replace it? Heck no.
Do you like it? I've owned more guitars for a non-collector than any other guitar player.
How old is
I
this
know.
guitar?
22 years old.
There you go.
But I've owned probably almost 50 guitars, and I own probably 10 now.
Yeah.
I've gotten rid of a lot of guitars because I did not know what I like, and I wish I probably had half of them still.
That's so funny you say that. I totally agree. I didn't have quite as many as that, but there's guitars I miss. Yeah.
If it's terrible, if it sounds bad and the action's terrible and you can't do anything about it, get rid of it because you're not enjoying playing it. But if it's just like, oh, I'd rather have something nicer. Yeah. I mean, you get something nicer if you can afford it, if you like it, if you want it.
Are your strings 3 years old? Because
Yeah,
if your strings are 3 years old,
then it probably sounds like garbage.
Yeah.
Change your strings, maybe go get it set up by a professional.
Yeah.
That'll help it a lot. And if you're just not happy with it or if there's something else you want, I think that's important too. If your instrument that you're playing inspires you, you're going to play more and you're going to be more motivated to practice. So.
Absolutely. Next question from Brad. Sorry, I'm moving through these quickly, but we don't have a ton of time today.
I'd rather
so-
get to a lot of them.
This one's from Brad. I put my thumb over the top of the E string, and then I see what you're saying. This is something I do a lot too. So when you put your thumb over top to mute the low E string or A string,
Yep.
then he's finding that it mutes his high E string when he plays certain chords. So because he shifts from here where his fingers are coming straight down, turns, then it's muting. Is there a way around that?
When I do that, my finger, I have divots all over this guitar. I mean, like really deep ones in the fingerboard because I've had it for so long. But when I do that, I definitely have a different kind of technique with my index finger. I pinch it more. I don't know how else to say it. So from this, and I usually mute that low E when I'm playing my C chord, just in case I accidentally hit it. My index fingernail is digging into the fretboard just so I can get it up taller so I don't accidentally mute that high E string. So just play with that, go back and forth, and really stare at what's going on and see if you can find a way around that. Now, not kinking your wrist too far one way or the other is something that I'm kind of breaking that rule right now because I've developed this enough to where I know how to make the C chord sound good while muting. And my wrist is kinked up pretty far this way. So it's something you're gonna have to play with and experiment on your own. And one thing that can help you is either using the classical method for holding the guitar, that helps a lot, or standing up with a strap, or putting a strap on while you're sitting down to bring the guitar up a little bit. That might help you too. Cool.
Nice. Okay. Next question here. This one's from Ariana. Really want to practice a song with simple strumming and simple notes, but I can't get the chords while strumming.
Okay.
So I think we kind of covered this
Yeah.
in one of the questions before, right?
Again, the same thing. Go through that process. Make sure you have the chords learned very well on their own first, to where you don't even have to think about them to go to them, and you can go immediately to them. You're not doing the one finger at a time thing. If you can do that for both chords, isolate the challenge, only work on 2 chords. If you can do that, keep the strumming really simple. Just downstrokes, maybe put a metronome on, do only whole notes, regular quarter notes, and just work on that one change as slowly as you need to, not even with a metronome at first. And then once you can do that, add the metronome in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't try to tackle a whole song or multiple chord changes. That's just going to make you frustrated in the long run. Really break things down and to really easy challenges for yourself. Cool.
Nice. Onward. This is a good one from Minimalist Wallet Reviews. Really need to learn nice sounding bends.
Bends? Challenge me.
And now
on
you have an acoustic guitar.
There
You got it.
That's tough.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with bends, to make them sound good, you have to practice them very consistently. Otherwise, like if I'm playing a lot of acoustic or fingerstyle stuff, and then I go to electric and start doing some really bluesy stuff or some really specific bends or country stuff particularly, I find that my pitch isn't quite as good. It's gotten rusty, right? So I have to knock the rust off. So I have to be doing that on a consistent basis to make my bends sound good to where they're right on pitch. And the first step to that is to double check your pitch. So if you're trying to do a whole step bend from this fret, bend it and then check your pitch. A whole step up. If it sounds like this, that's too low. So that's one really basic exercise you can do for your whole set bends and half set bends. And it's really the starting point, is being able to match a pitch that you know you're shooting for.
One other thing that you failed to mention, and you guys probably noticed, is the face. So when you bend, you have to make a face. It's got the face going on. I don't know if you even noticed. I find that when I'll do something and I'll be playing with someone, they'll be like, "You make the funniest faces when you do that." It's
You
like,
have
I
to.
didn't even know.
You just got to get out.
I didn't even know. Yeah. The more you bend, the stankier the face. That's what they say.
Right, it's true.
So, okay, next question here is from Myra. What do you suggest for a beginner acoustic or a beginner electric guitar?
It depends how big you are. I'm 5'9", anyone my size or bigger, probably a Dreadnought, this body style of guitar is fine. Anybody, me or smaller, my Taylor out there, it's a little bit smaller of a concert body style, or Andrew, your guitar is a triple O.
This is
Something
a triple
like
O.
that. Might be a little
I'm
better.
taller than Nate, but I'm a lot skinnier than Nate. And so I need little guitars. Otherwise, I look really weird. So this is a triple O, and I actually find it's a little too big.
Okay.
It feels big to me.
So that's the first thing to consider, is how big is the guitar. My girlfriend is 5'1", and this guitar, she's like, sounds good, but she's like this, right?
You can have shoulder problems and stuff doing that too.
But one way around that is to stand up when you play. It doesn't matter as much. But I like the Yamaha FG 700S for a Dreadnought style body guitar like this one. It's solid wood top. It's a great value. It sounds good. And then I'm sure Yamaha makes some kind of more concert body style, but I don't know specs on that as far as the name or model number of it.
Me
Not off the
either.
top of my head.
Yamaha FG series is one of my favorite ones to recommend to people because it's not crazy crazy expensive, but you get pretty good quality.
About $200 US. Now,
Yeah.
I like big baby Taylors too. They're a lot more expensive. They're like $500 or $600 maybe. I could be wrong on that. It's been a long time since I've
I
seen
think
it.
you're right. I was actually looking at those today. I think about
Okay.
$500. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's good. And
That's
then
my
for
go-tos.
electric,
Hey, it depends what kind of music you're into.
and budget matters so much
Budget,
too.
yeah.
Like that's the thing is like you can get something pretty awesome for $200-300.
Yep.
If you have about $1,000 to spend, you might not want to spend that much if you're a beginner.
It depends if you want a darker tone or a brighter tone.
That matters a lot.
What is it? The Squire
Classic Vibe
Classic
series.
Vibe series. Those are really good value. I think they're really good value.
They are my favorite
400
guitar at that price range. They're incredible. They kind of they're a little bit more classic vibe, so they've got that vintage kind of vibe. So like Telecaster or Stratocaster, so you get like
Brighter.
that classic thing. And they have kind of the old school appointments, so it feels just really comfy. It's not too shreddy.
ESP LTD
For a
Strats
shreddier
too.
guitar.
Yeah. Well, no, these are
the Strat.
I can't remember what they're called, but the equivalent. They're about the same price. They're really good too.
I didn't know that. I didn't even know that they made those.
But ESP makes good stuff for shredder and metal.
Epiphone stuff, the Epiphone Les Paul SG stuff is great for a little bit heavier. Like if you want like that thicker rock tone, it's probably a little bit better.
Yep.
There's other stuff. PRS SE.
Yeah, I would like those.
Nate's a PRS guy.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. This one's from Don. Would your weekly broadcast be topic specific or a regularly advancing course type?
I'm probably going to be more topic specific at this point, anyways, because right now we're basing the topic of the week on our members area. So we do a lesson there. It's a little bit more detailed, and then here we come and just kind of do a hangout, a little bit more casual. So
Yeah.
instead of preparing two completely separate lessons, we just do one according to what people are wanting to see.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to just sit and answer questions. It's a little bit more fun that way. So, okay, Michael, really like to be able to sing along while playing. Do you do much singing when you play? I don't know.
No, because I would have to keep it up, and I have no reason to keep it up. Like, but my girlfriend is a great singer-songwriter, and she's like, oh, it's the exact same thing. Fiance, yes.
Fiance, yeah.
She's a great singer-songwriter, and she's like, oh, it's just like what I had to do when I learned guitar. You have to start out slow and take it like one syllable, one sentence at a time, and just work on it just like you did when we were starting to learn how to strum and play chords and change between chords at the same time. And doing it on a regular basis is a big part of it too. Occasionally, if I have a gig that requires it or something, I'll go through periods where I'll do more singing, especially if I'm playing acoustic, not so much on electric, but doing it on a regular basis and starting out very slow and deliberate without a metronome, not trying to sing along to a track or anything, is a great way to have to build that coordination and those pathways in your brain to where you're going to be doing 3 things at one time, right?
I do a ton of singing. I don't know if you even knew that. I do
No.
a ton of singing with the band that I'm in. It's all backing vocal stuff, but we do a lot of 4-part harmony stuff. And the biggest thing I found is getting the guitar part to be completely to
Perfect.
muscle memory. So I'm quite often the stuff that I'm playing, it's like if I had to like improvise or come up with something on the spot, I couldn't sing to save my life at the same time. But if I have all those parts committed to muscle memory, then I'm not even thinking about that. I can focus on my singing. So it's like you sit down, you learn the guitar parts, you practice, leave the singing out. And then sometimes it's even good to do the inverse. So do the same with singing. Spend a ton of time singing, get that singing part really down without worrying about playing the guitar, and then work on putting them together. And like Nate said, start slow, don't worry about it. And then eventually down the road, like that transition time is like 20 minutes.
It's like if I try to pull up a pop song and play it on the guitar, listen to it once, and pretty much play it.
Yeah. It gets faster and faster the more you do it. Eventually, I'd love to do one of these little live lessons around songwriting. Like, I'd love for you to get Chelsea in to do some of that kind of stuff. It'd be great. Okay, we got time for a couple more questions. There's so many questions. We're not going to be able to get to all of them. They just
as
keep
many as
coming.
you
But
can.
we'll get as many as we can. Okay, this one's from Francis. Drinking water, does that help with my finger dexterity?
I would think so. If you're dehydrated, I don't think that's good for any part of your body. I would say yes, but I'm not an expert. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think stretching and doing dexterity exercises is probably a bigger deal. But I mean, dehydration and stuff like that, and not drinking enough water, I mean, that affects like every single part of your functioning body.
I saw a question in the chat. It's like, should I drink when I play to loosen me up or something like that? And I was like, man, that is so subjective. I have a friend who would only play loaded and he would get better. I can't have one beer. I'm playing in between the strings,
Really?
man. No. So it's,
One beer is my tone zone. It's where I feel the best. 2 beers, I'm on my way out, and then three beers is it's because I'm a light guy.
experiment at home, not at a gig.
Yeah. Depends how long the gig is. Depends where the gig is. How much they care about how cleanly you play. But yeah, drinking water totally helps. Drinking water, I find I do a ton of stretching. So like stretching every morning, stretching every night, stretching every time I play, tons of stretching in my hands. And that, I mean, I never have an issue with dexterity, I find. Just tons of stretching.
Cool.
Okay, next question. So this is from Caleb, another songwriting thing. I'd love to answer this more in another lesson, but do you write the lyrics and melody first or the chords when songwriting?
I think that varies from person to person, man. Most of the time, if I'm writing a song, it starts out by bass, drums, or whistling.
Really?
It's rare that I get the melody first, but if I do, it's almost always whistling, and then usually it's some groove, either drums or bass.
That's very interesting. I do all my writing co-writing. I write with another guy, and he will either come with a melody that he has or an idea, or he'll come with some basic chords and kind of a little bit of an idea, or I'll come up with a part and then we'll take that part and then he will try and sing something over that part. So it totally depends. I think if you write lyrics before, I have another buddy who he writes all his lyrics while he works. So he's an insulator, and while he's doing his hard work, he comes up with lyrics and he puts them down in his phone.
That's pretty cool.
And then he goes back and then he puts chords to it.
It's different for everybody, man.
It's different for everybody, yeah.
There are some great courses out there on songwriting too. I'm not sure what they are because it's not my field, but
yeah,
there are some really good courses online that are.
I think to start, a great way to do it is come up with some simple chord progressions, try and put melodies and lyrics to it. I think that's the easiest way to get into songwriting.
Yeah, and you'll find out if it works for you or not.
Yeah, and don't feel like you always need to rhyme. That's something too. Yeah. It's easy to just always want to rhyme stuff. That's a pro tip. Anyways. Okay, this is going to be the last question.
Okay.
I lied. I want to do 2 more questions, actually.
Good.
So this one is from Tassine Covers. How strongly do I hold the chords, and why is it every time I play a chord there is a little bit of buzz? I hold the chords in the right place, and also my guitar is brand new.
If your guitar is brand new, it might need to be set up.
Yeah.
He said, read that one more time.
Okay.
Sorry.
How strongly do I need, basically how hard do I need to push down every single time I play the chords, because there's always buzz?
It depends on the guitar. If there's always buzz, then you probably need to have your guitar set up or looked at. The neck is probably counterbowed a little bit, or the saddles are too low. I don't know if this is acoustic or electric. But if it's always buzzing, there's something that needs to be looked at by a professional as far as setup goes. Now, it depends how hard you're hitting it too. I can make almost any guitar buzz. I've only played one that I haven't. It was that Gibson we played at NAMM a couple years ago.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
freaking nuts.
Yeah, I remember that.
I could not make that guitar buzz. It was crazy. But yeah, it sounds like there's a setup issue going on with your guitar because I'm not playing very hard even on bar chords for this guitar. There's no buzz.
But if you're really new, you do have to push darn hard.
Yeah.
You do. Electric's a little bit easier, but like an acoustic with 12s on it, you do have to push pretty hard. Yeah. But if you find that you're pushing down and every single time you're getting buzz and there's just nothing you can do about it, probably setup issue.
Yeah, and if you've been playing for a few weeks, months, like 3 months, and you're still like, oh God, this is hard, your strings are probably way too high.
Yep, exactly. And that setup will remedy that on both an acoustic and electric. So
it's best somewhere between $30 and $60.
Yeah, depending on where you live. If there's more competitors, it's a little bit cheaper. And you can do it yourself, but if you're new to the guitar, it's probably better to just focus on having somebody else do it,
for sure.
At least at first, until you kind of understand. Okay, the last question, I think this is a good last question. This one's from Jerry, and he wants to know, why is my elbow hurting from playing guitar?
I need to know which elbow, man. It's probably, I would assume it's your strumming elbow. Because repetitive motion syndrome and things like tendinitis tend to creep up if you're tense and you're doing a lot of motions over and over again. So if you're holding onto the pick really hard, or if you're really tense, that's going to be a problem. I know professional guitar players, like really world-class guitar players, who have had major problems, and the doctor's like, nope, you have to quit playing, find a new profession. Just because they're a little too tense. So if you're tense, or a lot of times, if you pick just from your elbow, there's plenty of people that do that. Rusty Cooley picks from his elbow. He's one of the best pickers in the world, but I don't know how he does it without getting tendinitis, man. If I picked like this, let me see if I can get this in here. If I picked just from my elbow like this, even if it's single nose or strumming, my elbow would kill me. It would hurt that tendon right there. And that might be what you're talking about. So relax, try to get more of your wrist involved instead of your elbow, whether it's picking or strumming. And you might want to try using the classical method because your arm isn't as high up, it's not as kinked back, or standing up with the guitar, the strap. That straightens your elbow out a little bit. So just be really conscious of how tense you are, and then try those few things as far as how you hold the guitar.
Cool. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it. It looks like, we just got to follow up. Fretting elbow.
Again, same thing as far as tension, but I don't think that's as big of a deal. I would probably try using the classical method because it gets your elbow a little bit straighter. It changes the position, or even putting a strap on and bringing it up higher. It's going to change the position of your elbow. And if there's any tension there, you need to take some time, relax, and then try it again. But try those couple of things for a few weeks. Even putting a strap on. I have a strap here. Let's see. And using the classical method like this might help a little bit instead of always being more bent like this with the casual method. So, there you go.
Cool. Okay, well, guys, thank you for coming out. Like we said, we're still kind of figuring out how we want to do this, how we want to lay it out. But it seems like lots of people came out. We had lots of questions, and we missed a ton of questions, and I'm sorry. But it's hard. And maybe in the future, maybe we'll focus more on topic-specific questions to maybe make it a little more congruent. Do you guys like the more free-for-all feel? I don't know. It's kind of fun for us like to have questions from all over the place, but we love to hear from you guys. Next week, on Tuesday, 4 o'clock Pacific, we are going to be doing this again. I think the topic is going to be mainly on strumming. Strumming. So we're going to be doing some tips and tricks.
Yep. And if you guys found this helpful and you want more stuff like this, you should check out the Ultimate Guitar Toolbox. It's my collection of 50 step-by-step lessons that address a lot of big problem area stuff like was being asked in the chat today. It's free. All you have to do is go to guitarlessons.com/toolbox and you can sign up for it there. And you get access. It addresses those areas to a lot of fun jam tracks and a lot of practical musical applications.
Yeah. And also before this, we do our GL Academy live show, which is similar to this one, but it's for our members only. And that one's a little bit more focused.
It's a little more instructional, yeah.
And it's a little longer as well. So if you guys are interested in that as well, GL Academy. Cool. So we do that.
Other than that, we'll see you guys next time. If you haven't made any goals for yourself, set some goals for your playing. Be consistent with your practice, and I guarantee you will see results in your playing. Just like the guy in the chat today who said, I've been doing this 10-minute challenge, chord changing challenge. So those 3 things: set goals, be consistent in your practice, and you will see results. We'll see you later.
See ya.